Well, good morning again, everybody, and it's time to visit with our friends at Crete Schaefer, and Tim Aschoff is with us. And Tim, you wished me a belated happy 4th before we went on the air, and right back at you. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. It's a great week to be on. It's great to celebrate the 4th of July and recognize the independence and the democracy we have, and that it's been sustained for so many years is somewhat amazing. I know sometimes if you watch the news these days, you would think we were not one country, but it's great that as you go out and travel the country, as I know you do, and as I do, it's a great country to be a part of. There is so much opportunity that continues today, and the best part of it is there's still just as great a people as there were, 200 years ago when this country was founded. So.
Very, very quickly, we have a lot to talk about here, but since we're talking about military veterans, and you guys are such a part of that initiative in the industry, we play the national anthem every morning at the beginning of my program. And a driver called in this morning and said, I wonder if I'm the only driver who takes off his hat and holds it over his heart when we play the anthem, circumstances permitting. And we got call after call this morning from guys who do that, or they'll have the radio up loud while they're strapping a load or something. If they have the radio tuned in, they'll stop at attention for the national anthem. And I think that's a strain that will never disappear from this industry, Tim.
No, it is great, and I had the opportunity. I was fortunate to be able to take my family to a 4th of July celebration, and it was kind of a street fair, and a lot was going on, and saw the same experience. There was a bandstand at the end, and when they started to play some patriotic songs, the people stopped. They stood at attention, and it was just great to see that no matter what some of our differences may be at times, or what we hear about our differences are supposed to be, we have that patriotism kind of in our DNA here, and that is always great to see.
Absolutely. Well, we have Issac Phillips back on the program this morning. I'll have you reintroduce Issac and introduce Joe Fisher.
Sure. Well, Issac, as many of you know, is our director of driver development in our owner-operating program, and under that driver development role, he plays a huge part in our military hiring initiatives, and certainly has been in that role long enough to be experienced to almost answer any question drivers may have. But a big part of that role that he really helped move us forward as a company was working through the VA to get our military program approved as an apprenticeship program, so that the military veterans can use GI benefits when they come on board with us, and certainly knows how we can help that transition. And then also have driver Joseph Phillips. Joe's been with us since 2014. Before that, he was in the Air Force and served from 2010 to 2014. So first off, I'd like to publicly thank Joe for his service, first of all in the military, and then certainly making that transition back to civilian life. And I know he's got a great deal of information he's able to share on what that transition's like, because any change is not easy, but we certainly try to help the veterans that are leaving the service to come on board and find a great occupation, as there are many in trucking.
Thank you very much, Tim. And guys, we're going to kind of bounce around all different aspects of what's going on with veterans / trucking and what opportunities there are. But overall, Tim, why is trucking a good opportunity for military veterans? And then, Issac, I'm going to kind of ask you to zero in on that a little bit and talk about some of the types of job opportunities that exist. Let's get that overall 30,000-foot view, though, first, Tim.
Sure. As I've talked to many veterans that we have, and the great thing about being here at Crete and Schaefer is over 30% of our workforce are veterans. So we're walking down the halls and out on the road with a lot of veterans, so I get a lot of feedback from them. And so I asked them that exact question: why is trucking such a good opportunity? And I think there's just actually many aspects to that. And one of the things that sometimes we forget is that, or those of us who haven't served in the military, is that military is a lot about teamwork. And while a driver may be out there in a truck and may seem alone, for a smooth operation to work, it does take a lot of teamwork. And in our industry, to make that teamwork happen, it really takes a lot of good communication. And I know a lot of military members, they were trained often on communication and clear communication, because if you don't have good communication, things can go terribly wrong out on a battlefield. And so how our industry is set up, where a person, a driver in particular, may be out on the road by themselves, they know they're still tied back to a team, and it takes a team to make everything happen. So you have to have clear communication. You have to have some rules so the whole team knows what playbook they're on, and then certainly we have the rules of the FMCSA and others that some of the veterans are used to working in that structure, and then some discipline, ensuring that they keep on task, keep on schedule, and I think that's something you're used to as well. But what I really like more about this is the personal side, where I hear that there's still that camaraderie out there amongst the drivers, and certainly even the veterans here in the offices and the shop, where you're counting on each other even when you can't be with each other, because you've worked together. You've had that same background. You're coming from that same playbook. And then finally, one thing I don't think about often is that when you leave the military, while you're in the military, you had a lot of great benefits and support. And getting into an industry like ours, where a lot of companies like ours continue that, we have mentoring programs or otherwise to provide that support, but just as importantly, then benefits for the family members of the service members. So I know that's a lot of things, but as I've talked to many different veterans, it's like, well, what is it about the industry? And it's not necessarily that one thing. It's all those things together that feel like a good continuation of where they've come from.
Indeed. Well, let's kind of zero in a little bit. Issac Phillips, and again, Issac is the Driver Development and Owner-Operator Program Manager. So you deal with the kind of the nuts and bolts of where someone might fit into the industry. What type of job opportunities do exist in the industry?
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning, Dave. Good to be on with you again.
Same here.
I would say it's a good transition, just because there's a lot of different skill sets that military members have. Not just driving, but diesel mechanics, operations type folks. They've got a lot of those skill sets that they're time oriented, responsible, good communicators. Like Tim said, they enjoy teamwork, and that's what this industry and these different companies are all about. We're all on the same team out there. So we've had pretty good success with people that maybe we're 88 mics, which is mechanic type folks, or people that were out foot soldiers. Different skills that they have, and utilizing those. And like Tim mentioned, we've got a mentoring program. We've got drivers that are part of our Patriot fleet that like to take other drivers under their wings that are transitioning and kind of help them through, especially that first year transition to the civilian world, and how to work with different customers and just ins and outs of the position. So just got a lot of helping hands out there to get folks through that trying time. So.
And Dave, much like the military, what's been great here, and I've been able to watch myself, is these people that have transitioned kind of go up through the ranks, so to speak. We have a couple of our terminal managers that were lifers in the military and came on board with us, and now have moved up here as well, and managed two of our major terminals in Kansas City and Harrisburg, PA. We have a former Ranger who's now in line to lead our safety department. He's a safety director now, moved up through the ranks. So there's just a lot of opportunity. We have one of our original Patriot Fleet drivers, a driver out on the road, has moved in, and then is now a driver manager in operations. So much like the military too, there's just a lot of different opportunities where if you come in at one role, that doesn't mean you can't move up the ranks as you expand your skill set and show your leadership.
Well, Joe Fisher, we haven't forgotten about you. In fact, you're kind of the guy that this conversation is really all about. So you heard what Tim and Issac had to say, but let's kind of back up a little bit. You're in the Air Force, spent, 4 or 5 years in the U.S. Air Force. Why trucking when you came out? Did you come from a trucking family? Did you do trucking or mechanics in the Air Force? And were there some choices that you made within the trucking industry before you settled in on driving? Kind of give us your story, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Okay. I knew a few people that were in with me that decided to start driving trucking. It's not that hard to get into, because a lot of the things you learn in the military kind of apply in this career field.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're doing a specific job, you can get your CDL without actually going to any courses. Plus, almost everybody in the military has some experience with heavy equipment. My particular job was ammo, so I never really drove too many big trucks in the Air Force.
But it seemed as if trucking was going to be a pretty good fit for you, even while you were still in.
Right. Well, another thing is also the military helps you prep for being away from home for extended periods of time. And so you're used to that. That helps.
That's a good point, Tim, because we've talked about, job opportunities, advancing up through the ranks, so to speak, and that sort of thing, the job descriptions, but the human aspect is at the basis of everything we do.
It is, and that's why, as I mentioned earlier, there's just so many different aspects of being in, the military and how it flows over to trucking. And one of the things, as I mentioned too, is as I was originally, I remember about 5 years ago now, it's amazing how time flies, I was talking with one of our original Patriot Fleet drivers, and I said, why did you become a trucker and why did you come on board? And he didn't say any of those other things I said. He went right to, I have a family, I have to support a family, and I was used to doing that as I was out away from them, and for me to be comfortable that they're being taken care of, I need to make sure I have a really good benefits program, that I'm going to make good earnings, and be able to provide some of those necessities for them. And so just as I mentioned, what we have here to do that, so while a driver is away from home, they can feel comfortable that they're going to be earning a good paycheck and having good benefits to take care of their family. Still a big aspect of that. But at the same time, and I know that there's always pros and cons, I know that sometimes that transition's been difficult too, because the family members may be thinking, well, my spouse is now out of the military, there's going to be more time at home. And so we've had to help balance that as well, and try to find that right fleet that works for the family too, where they'll be home a little bit more often than in the military, and so find that right fit, because as you know, there's many different types of driving in trucking, and so sometimes it's a balance. And I guess what Isaac and team does well, and what we like to see, is to work with that individual to see what is going to fit for them, and know it's a transition. With what you start out with, we've seen it many times when people come out of the military, it evolves, and we need to evolve with them as far as their expectations for home time and that support. So it's a variety of things, but family is that's another thing. Is we all God, country, and family is a lot of what we hear from our veterans, so we can't forget about that, and we have to provide that support.
Indeed. You kind of remind me of an old joke, though, real quick, Tim. Got a couple of guys walking across a truck stop parking lot, and one of the fellas was thinking about changing companies, and he talked to the other guy, and, man, this guy just couldn't talk. He loved the company. And the fella wound up joining that company. About 6 weeks later, he sees the same guy. He says, "Hey, I thought you said this company was great to work for. I haven't been home in 6 weeks." And the fella says, "Yeah, ain't that great?" So, but again, to your point, and I told that to kind of reinforce your point, is that every person is different, and then every family situation is different. Every family member is different. So you're juggling a lot of people there, so to speak, to try to get the right niche for the right person. Because if you don't, then everybody loses, and it's not a good thing. If you do, then all of a sudden you've got somebody who's going to not only stay with the company, but thrive with the company. And that's, I know, what your goal is. Isaac, I'm going to kind of go right back to you for some more details here. What programs are available to military veterans looking to enter trucking? It seems like almost every other week now we see something new coming out of DOT, especially FMCSA. You guys have your own initiatives. The industry at large does. It's becoming kind of a small catalog, I think.
It is. It's becoming more popular all the time. We started this probably 5 or 6 years ago, really focusing on those that are able to use their GI or Montgomery Bill benefits, and we try to make it as easy as possible. All we ask is for the certificate of eligibility, and then, as a company, then we file everything to the VA. The purpose behind the VA and companies like ourselves doing this is to really subsidize that income, throughout that first year, to make that transition as easy as possible. So, we've had a lot of successes, and I'll toot Joe's horn here a little bit. He went through the program in 2014, 2015, and been very successful. Been here, like I said, almost 3 years now, and not only runs a lot of miles, but runs a lot of safe miles. So really takes a lot of pride in his work. So.
Well, Isaac, you kind of lead me right back into a conversation with Joe, because, Joe, I wanted to ask you first off, and then we'll kind of get Tim to talk about this as well. But there are challenges, of course. You can take a challenge and look at it from two different aspects, of course, positive, negative. But what are some of the challenges that you faced when you transitioned out of the Air Force into civilian life / into trucking?
I'd say probably one of the biggest challenges is just keeping up with your bills and everything because of the change of
Isaac Phillips with Crete Carrier and Schaefer Trucking. Unfortunately, I'm either on the phone or away from my desk.
I don't know how that happened.
Back as soon as I can. Otherwise, press 0 and pound. You'll be transferred to the operator. You can ask for someone else.
I don't think this has ever happened before. Let me make sure that we still have the guys with us. Joe, are you there?
For more options. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Tim, are you there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Isaac, are you there? I think we just lost Isaac. We'll get him back. Joe, I'm so sorry that happened. Let me ask you again, and I'll let you kind of get started. Bills, paying bills. That's the first thing that hits you when you muster out, huh?
Well, the reason it's kind of hard is because you're changing, your pay's changing. Because in the military, you're used to a specific amount every 2 weeks. It doesn't change very much. Whereas trucking, it varies based on miles, your home time, and all this. So it can be hard to keep track of everything and make sure you get everything paid on time.
And, of course, that's going to be a challenge, and that's a make it or break it kind of situation, Tim. So how do you and that's one aspect of a transition. A transition pretty much runs the gambit from A to Z.
Yes, and that's part of what Isaac had talked about. Thankfully we can work and with some of the VI bills or GI bills that are out there and help steady that income. But I think the biggest success we found in helping that is we try to match up our oncoming veterans with an existing veteran that's driven with us for a couple of years. And what we found is even matching them up if they came from the same branch of service is helpful, where the best thing to do is to learn from experience and learn from somebody that you can easily develop a relationship with and develop a relationship of trust. So we found that mentoring program to be very valuable in helping those drivers understand, because it as with any change, first of all, there's the fact that you have to change. And then second, it's, learning, okay, how does this industry work? How does this impact me? But then it's developing good habits in whatever we do. And, those mentors have been through that transition to the point where they developed those good habits. And so sharing those habits, sharing what it takes to be successful out on the road has been what we've found probably our biggest key to helping, through that transition.
Joe, I'm going to ask you to maybe talk to some of the folks out there who may be in the military. We have a lot of folks listening on bases and posts around the country. We also have a lot of folks who have relatives who are in military right now listening. Something that you can pass along to them in terms of advice that you would give to veterans looking to join the trucking industry?
Okay, yeah, I would definitely say use your GI Bill to get your CDL. That way you can pretty much pick and choose what company you want to join. You're not stuck having to go to one of the ones that requires you to stay with them for a couple of years after going to their school. It kind of helps open up your options for better paying jobs. And find one that definitely works through the VA through that mentorship program, because that really does help in that transition. And I know Crete specifically, they actually, all they did was send me a piece of paper that I sent to the VA, and then everything after that, I didn't have to do anything to keep with the VA.
There's no line like a streamline, that is for sure. Joe, thank you so much for being with us here on the program. Continued success to you there at Crete. Joe Fisher from the Air Force, of course, and joined Crete back in 2014. I think we lost Isaac, but Tim, say thanks to Isaac for us. And Tim Aschoff, thank you for bringing the guys to us and this topic to the program this morning.
Well, thank you for discussing it. This is, as I mentioned, the week of 4th of July. It's always a time for us to make sure we say thank you to all of our veterans that have been out there serving, those that are continuing to serve, and, welcome back to civilian life, and please join us in the trucking industry.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to talking with you again really soon. Tim Aschoff, the President and CEO of Crete Carrier Corporation. Issac Phillips was with us, Driver Development and Owner-Operator Program Manager. And, of course, Joe Fisher, one of the Crete drivers out there who went through the military transition program.